Hello there. Good to see you again, and good to be back. To a rather windy Sussex today. We've lost one tree overnight, but hopefully it's calming down now. I should have to get my boots on and see to that after I've finished here. Meanwhile, last week I did promise to talk about tank containers again, because there's been quite a lot going on in that market recently, some of which you may have missed. But before I get onto that, I just had an email from EPCA, the European Petrochemical Association, to announce that they are going to hold their 55th annual meeting in virtual format again, and it will be October 5th to the 7th. Now, those of you who go regularly to EPCA's annual meeting know that it's one of the biggest events of its kind in the world, possibly, certainly in Europe. So if you're at all involved in the chemical supply chain, that's something to look for and sign up to. There'll be reimagining industry for the future world. Anyway, back to tank container. Yes, tank container leasing. It's hot property at the moment. We had Peacock being acquired by investment funds, and subsequently Peacock buying Gem Containers fleet and business. We had Trifleet being bought by GATX, which knows all about leasing through its rail activities. I understand that Air Marois, the French subsidiary of SNCF, really, which has its own rail operations and also owns Euretainer and Raffles Lease, is up for sale, possibly quite soon. There'll be an announcement on that. Also, that, and I think I mentioned this when we spoke a while ago about the EPCA's annual tank container fleet survey, that there's a number of smaller and some quite substantial players emerging in Asia, some quite often with Chinese money, I think is the idea. They may not be headquartered in China. I think Singapore and Hong Kong are more likely. And some of those actually made it onto EPCA's list of major lessors and operators, in fact. And I was having a chat with Reg Lee at EPCA about this, and the thing about leasing is that it's not really about the industry. It's not, there's not interest in tank container leasing because it's a growing market, although it is. It's to do with money, and it's to do with finding a place to put money where you've got a reliable income stream. And clearly investment funds see some sort of stability from the tank container sector that is attracting them at the moment. I think, I've been around long enough to know that these things move in cycles. There are fashions in leasing. There are fashions in investment. In recent years, it's been the bulk liquid storage business that's attracted a lot of investment money. And these funds come in and they pay decent money generally, but they're looking to get out again in possibly a 5 or 7 year horizon, maybe even shorter, with a return. And Reg Lee did mention to me that he thought some of the deals that have been done lately were being done at a bit, getting on for 10 times EBITDA, which is really quite surprising. But then, if you're making money on these operations, leasing stuff out, then it's a good deal, because, of course, money in the bank is making absolutely nothing at all at the moment. There's also a feeling, I think, that the Chinese money coming into tanks is, as it was in South Africa many years ago, a way of putting local currency into an international business that's going to return dollars. It's a sort of microcosm of what can go on in the international supply chain. If you're leasing, you don't really need to. You need to have some sort of technical knowledge somewhere, I suppose, along the line, but you don't have to be a dangerous goods specialist. You leave that up to the people you lease them to. Which takes me on to another subject, actually, because there was a rather nasty incident in India last week, I think, in the last week, where a worker was killed while cleaning a tank container. The press reports I saw called it a tanker, but the picture was clearly of a tank container with the body being lifted out. Now, there's a danger, I think. Some people might think there's a danger of seeing stories like this and thinking, oh, tank containers are dangerous. But that's not, that's not the point of it, really. This is a classic confined space entry accident. They happen all the time. And they happen all around the world. I mean, they may happen more often. Certainly in India, I see quite a few. And in Africa, where you have quite often a sort of more informal tank cleaning and tank repair, tank maintenance activities going on. But it's not just tank containers, it's road tanker barrels, it's silos as well, silo trailers, fixed silos, fixed storage terminals, storage tanks, and even at big storage terminals, this sort of thing goes on. So it's a enclosed space entry, confined space entry, whichever you like, issue, which is something that EPCA has addressed in the past and has a best practice guideline, I believe, on the subject, as does EPCA, I think. But if we were to take one lesson from that incident and that others like them, it's that you need to know, you need to be sure that the place you're taking your tank to be cleaned or fixed or welded knows what they're doing. I understand that in this instance, the tank in question had been owned by a reputable chemical company which had sold it on to an operator who was employing it again on the sort of more informal market, and had taken it to basically a truck wash to get the thing cleaned out. And they didn't have the knowledge or expertise to do it safely. Sadly, one man died as a result. So it's something always to bear in mind when you're looking after your tanks, whatever sort of tanks they are. Speaking about EPCA, they had a recent webinar, which unfortunately I wasn't able to get on. Oh, it was a bad time for me, on bursting discs. And I understand that there are still a lot of improper practices around the use of bursting discs. But also next week, more to the point, EPCA is having a webinar on FRP tanks. These are fibre reinforced plastics, or composite tanks, as they tend to be called in Europe. You may know, if you've been following this, we have written about it in HCB, that the UN experts have now adopted some provisions on FRP tanks for their design, testing, construction, and so on, which are markedly different from the existing provisions in ADR. The FRP tanks have been developed primarily, actually, Russia largely, and Finland, I think, and now in the Benelux countries, and they, offer advantages, particularly in terms of tear weight. But stainless steel doesn't corrode, so a standard tank container can go on for as long as you can keep the rest of it working. So that's not an issue. What is an issue, I think, and certainly something that EPCA will be looking at, is that FRP tanks should be subject to the same level of safety requirements that standard tank containers do. Whether that, I believe, we're getting to the end of my technical ability when it comes to things like that. But I think ITCO clearly feels that FRP tanks are being given an easier ride than tank containers, and that's not fair. So anyway, I think that'll be worth sitting in on next week if you're around. I think it's on the 11th, which is next Tuesday. I hope to see you there if you're in that business. If not, I shall be back here at the same time next week, looking at some stuff, interesting stuff for anybody involved in the movement of hazardous materials in North America, where there are some regulatory changes afoot, and of course a new administration in the US, which is going to have a big impact on regulatory activity, I think, over the next few years. So I hope to see you then. Meanwhile, stay safe and be lucky, as they say. Bye for now.